Rami Khouri is a distinguished policy fellow at American University of Beirut. He joins me live from Boston, Massachusetts. Professor, great to have you here with us on TRT World. Now, as part of Blinken's visit to the Middle East, it is widely expected that he's going to be pushing Netanyahu to safeguard civilians in Gaza. But here's the catch. The White House said the Biden administration is not drawing any sort of red lines for Israel, and this was just 3 weeks into October 7. So it pretty much means Israel can do whatever it wants, and the United States would not step in. So my question is, without a major change in how the White House deals with Israel, like reconsidering the no red lines stance, Blinken might have a tough time achieving his goals on this visit, putting pressure on Israel or Netanyahu, don't you think?
I think absolutely you're right. And this is one of the underlying and constant problems with the United States as the major mediator in this situation, because it is also the major backer of Israel and military might, political support at the UN, economic support, anything that Israel wants, it gets from the United States without question. And so it's very difficult for the U.S. to be a serious mediator. And we see it in his visit. He's talking about different things about the day after and governance in Gaza and humanitarian aid and the hostages. But most of what he says, if you read it very carefully, it's nuanced to reflect Israeli priorities with some bones that are thrown to the Palestinians. He talks about moving progress towards a two-state solution with a Palestinian state, but at the same time he talks about absolute security for Israel and for it never to be attacked again. So he's not an impartial mediator, and this is his dilemma. And he's also dealing in a situation in the region where the Arab leaders he may be talking to are certainly willing to try to find ways to stop the fighting and get peace and security in the region, which we all want. But the populations, the people of these regions, of this region, mostly are very critical of Israel and the United States because of their position. And if Blinken and the U.S. really want peace and security and more humanitarian aid to the Palestinians and less killing, they just should support a ceasefire resolution. So simple. It could have been done 2 months ago. And the hostages would be exchanged for the prisoners, and all the things that he says he and Israel want would be achieved. But the U.S. is not willing to do that for reasons that most people in the world cannot quite fully explain. It's a very bizarre situation where the U.S. is complicit in genocide, and this is now being presented as such in legal cases. But at the same time, the U.S. doesn't seem to want to change. So you're right, it's very contradictory, and we shouldn't expect a lot to happen if things don't change.
Professor, let me ask you here, what would it take for the United States, for the Biden administration to support a ceasefire in Gaza? What needs to happen in Gaza so that Biden can finally support a ceasefire?
What needs to happen is something that's impossible to happen. It wants the Hamas to lay down its arms and say it'll never attack Israel again, and sign on the bottom line that it will be a subservient state, a subservient state that is under the tutelage of Israel forever. And this is never going to happen. The only security that can really come is if Israel and the Palestinians both achieve their reasonable goals, which is statehood, sovereignty, and security. They're very reasonable goals. Everybody in the world wants these. But the United States doesn't seem to be willing to apply the same rights to Palestinians as it does to Israelis. And we see it in the conduct of this savage attack by Israel, this barbarian destruction of Gaza and the siege that includes starvation and no medicine and things like that. I mean, this is unprecedented, I think, in the modern history of the world. I'm not sure if anybody else has done this so openly. It's talked about it, that the Israeli leaders all talk about what they want to do, including now expulsion, send them to the Congo, wherever, and enjoying the total support of the world's strongest power, which is the United States. This is really something we've never experienced. And that's why most people don't really know what to do about it. But reasonable people, seasoned diplomats, neutral diplomats, say Europeans or people around the world who are not fully behind Israel or fully behind the Palestinians, people who want to apply the rule of law, say it's very simple. You negotiate
Right.
a permanent agreement based on UN rules and laws, and this is what we hope the Americans will do one day, will play a role in that process.
Fascinating insights into the topic. Professor Rami Khouri, thank you very much for talking to us here on TRT World. Really appreciate your taking out the time.